Last year, Cummins announced a spinoff of the filtration business. Should shareholders accept it? Is it the right move for shareholders? I'm going to go over their business model, how it fits in with their business model, how it fits in with their plans, and answer that question for you.
All right. So, for those of us out there that are not familiar with Cummins, could you explain their business model and maybe what it is they do?
Sure. Basically, think diesel engines, think anything engines. So, big 18-wheeler trucks, think even smaller buses, think mining vehicles, the equipment they use for mining, the equipment they use for oil and gas. All of those sort of things work in the Cummins solutions. They also have distribution, they also have components. So they're there to help the bigger manufacturers who don't want to make the engines themselves have a supplier who can deal with the engines and the aftermarket part of having parts.
All right. So, now that we have a basic understanding of what Cummins does, can you explain to me the spinoff that they announced recently?
Sure. So they want to spin off the filtration business, which is a part of their components business segment. So you can see a lot of their profits come from the engine and the components segments of their business. Within the components, you have filtration making up around 19% of sales as of Q2 2021. So, that's significant for several ways. First off, because they're doing just a spin-off of filtration, they're not necessarily abandoning ship on providing components because that's kind of a key part of their strategy. They're just really trying to move away from the older legacy technology when it comes to transportation and moving towards the newer ones. So it really is strategic because over and over and over again, management for Cummins has talked about how we are not going to ignore this push to decarbonization. We understand that diesel engines quite possibly have a shelf life. And so they have positioned their portfolio in several ways. This would be one of them. A second way they're positioning the portfolio, they recently announced an acquisition of a company called Meritor who do axles and brakes. So if you think about whether it's internal combustion engines, fossil fuel engines, or if we're talking about electric vehicles, those are both going to need tires, axles, brakes. So they are positioning themselves toward the future. They're not completely spinning off the components, but they are spinning off filtration, which is a key component in diesel engines and other internal combustion engines, but is not a part of something like an electric vehicle engine.
All right. Well, that lays it out really nicely. So, I guess, is this something do you think the shareholder should accept?
I mean, do we have a choice? In all seriousness, though, I do like the way that management is always strategically looking at parts of the business. They talked about in a recent call how twice a year they're doing these really big picture strategic looks and they're saying, should we acquire business? Should we separate a business? Should we sell a business segment? And how does that fit in with our overall goal, which is return on invested capital? They've been very explicit that that's a goal. I like that as a shareholder. I think it's a good move. I trust management knows what they're doing. They've earned really high returns on capital in the past, and they do seem to be really pushing towards this future. One of those examples is their new power segment, which is something that they're really pushing and investing towards, which is looking at alternatives such as hydrogen and some of those other alternatives to diesel, while still kind of milking that diesel cash cow that they've built and really been able to manage and really just earn fantastic returns on. As far as what to do if you're a shareholder and the spinoff goes through, I would definitely look at whatever documents come out. I know I will be evaluating these documents to see whether I'm going to sell the spinoff and add it back to Cummins or if I'm just going to keep it, let it ride. So I did do a video several years ago about spinoffs and some of the details around that. So I would recommend checking that out. Joel Greenblatt did a great book about spinoffs and talked about the filings you should look at. And that's covered in that video. So go check that out and we'll talk to you next time.